This video was brought to you by Squarespace.
Ude uye idne a website way? That's Pig Latin for, do you need a website? If you do need a website, but you also need a lot of help making that website, then you need you need Squarespace.
Squarespace made building my website, Arlo recommends, ridiculously easy. There's like a bunch of templates to choose from, and you literally just pick one and mess around with it for a little while, and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I guess I have a website now. Making content is super easy, super fast. I can do whatever I want with the text. I can format things. I can embed pictures and video and tweets and just like really anything I need. I can schedule posts ahead of time. I can have them automatically pushed to my social media. Lots of little convenience features. If I ever need more, Squarespace offers a load of powerful extensions and, my favorite, analytics. You gotta see how your website's doing. You gotta stare at the numbers. That's what being a content creator is all about. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain.
And now for today's recommendation. People who recreate famous songs using video game sound fonts.
Like, they make arrangements of songs using only sounds and instruments and stuff from specific games. I'm kind of obsessed with this. On Forward is one of the best, and they redid the entirety of Radiohead's In Rainbows, Super Mario 64 style, and it's incredible. My favorite, though, is probably their version of Boards of Canada's Roy G. Biv, which I think I like more than the original.
Thanks again to Squarespace. Now, on a if way the idiove. Sorry, I'm not gonna do this joke again.
Privacy?
At the time of this recording, we are on the cusp of the release of Tears of the Kingdom. It took over 6 years, but we are finally getting our same system sequel.
When Breath of the Wild first released, as it did right on Switch's day one, there's always been this idea that Nintendo might do an asset reusing sequel. I mean, the Switch was fresh. It had its whole life ahead of it. And they're always working on Zelda. The next one is always coming. Why wouldn't we get another Zelda before the next system rolled around? And while technically Nintendo might have pulled a Skyward Sword and made a totally new game in that time, it didn't seem quite as likely this time around. Breath of the Wild was huge. It was a bold new direction for the series. It built such a massive, solid foundation and managed to be great while still having a lot of room to grow. It was ripe for a sequel. Ocarina of Time was the same. It was new. It built that foundation, so we ended up getting Majora's Mask a few years later. And that idea of an asset reusing sequel that builds upon the newly established foundation just made so much sense for Breath of the Wild. And now we are finally getting that sequel. No, it didn't end up being a quick sequel like we kinda hoped, but we're still getting it. And it looks incredible. Maybe it's out by the time you're watching this. Maybe it is incredible. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably incredible.
So now that we're here and we are getting that sequel, now that we are finally getting Breath of the Wild 2, there is a question that has been eating away at me. Where in the heck? Where in the name of Doug Bowser's dog Bauer who dug up his flowers is Super Mario Odyssey 2?
Zelda and Mario were the dynamic duo of the Switch's launch year. They're Nintendo's biggest, most beloved and popular first-party IPs, not counting Pokemon, which is kind of like first and a half party or whatever. When you're talking about Nintendo's tentpoles, you're talking about Mario and Zelda. And they were right there at the beginning. One for launch, one for the holidays, and it was perfect. At the end of 2017, both series now had the whole life of the Switch ahead of them. And it was clear that it was gonna be a big success. Nintendo started talking about how long its lifespan would be. Considering console generations are about 7 years on average now, it was obvious that 7 years would probably be the minimum for the Switch. And both Zelda and Mario are popular enough that, again, they've always got games in development. Always. So yeah, asset reusing sequels for both seemed pretty darn likely, especially because Mario has his own version of Majora's Mask. Super Mario Galaxy was so cool and had such an interesting core concept that there were loads of other things the devs could do with it. They had so many ideas, they basically had to make a sequel. And when they did, they really delivered. 1 trillion new ideas built on top of the old ones, even more refined level design. If Super Mario Galaxy 2 never happened and Nintendo jumped straight into 3D World, it would have been a tragedy. A straight up tragedy. They would have robbed the world of an incredible game. If the potential is there, you gotta jump on it. Super Mario 3D World didn't carry that same need for a sequel in my eyes. It was already a sequel of sorts to 3D Land, and it really did a lot. It didn't have one core idea to play with like Galaxy did. It was really just a collection of power-ups and level mechanics and such. It did what it set out to do. Oh, but then Odyssey comes along. Here is a game that brings back the sandbox format, gives us the most fun and complex movement system since Sunshine, and introduces the capture mechanic, which has unlimited potential. I mean, seriously, the basic idea of possessing any kind of enemy or character or even inanimate object, you can do anything with it. It can be used to enable basically any kind of gameplay. Even just in Odyssey, you use it to turn the game into a third-person shooter and an RC racing game. You get to be Goombas and Hammer Bros and Chain Chomps. And there are a million other things you could do with it. Other classic Mario enemies that Odyssey didn't even touch. The potential is unbelievably vast. And here's the thing, there's another thing that Breath of the Wild and Odyssey have in common. They both alienated a lot of their respective series fans. Many people were disappointed by Breath of the Wild. And from my perspective at least, it feels like Odyssey disappointed even more. Every time the game comes up, there are loads of people talking about how it just didn't quite do it for them. Tears of the Kingdom looks like it's fixing a lot of the problems people had with its predecessor, and I have no doubt that it will appeal to much more of that Zelda-loving audience. At least I greatly hope so. A sequel to Odyssey would be an opportunity to bridge that Mario gap, to fix some of those issues, deliver more of what people missed, just make it more appealing to more people. No one denies that Odyssey's foundation is sound. It's just that the execution was lacking. People felt that it had design issues. For the record, not me. I love that game. And then, of course, we've got to consider another similarity. Both Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey sold so unbelievably well. The Switch itself has sold very well, and that large, dedicated install base has certainly helped a lot. Although I think that install base is so big largely because of Mario and Zelda, which is my next point. Those two games just appeal to a lot of people. Open world Zelda and sandbox Mario, they may have their critics, but apparently they strike a chord with a lot of players. At the time of this recording, Super Mario Odyssey has sold over 25 million copies, making it the highest selling 3D Mario more than 2 times over, and one of Nintendo's most profitable games ever. 25 million. A sequel could sell half that number. No, it could sell a quarter. Heck, let's just round it down to 5. Super Mario Odyssey 2 could sell a measly, a microscopic 5 million copies, and that would probably still be a pretty darn successful game money-wise. Especially if it was built upon an already established foundation using the same engine and a lot of the same assets and stuff, making it cheaper to develop. And there's no way it would sell that few copies. It would definitely sell more than that. So the foundation is there. The design potential is there. The audience is there. The install base is there. Everything is there. The setup is perfect. There is every reason in the world that Nintendo would want to give us Super Mario Odyssey 2. So where is it? I'm looking around and I'm just not seeing it anywhere. And it's weird. Where is Super Mario Odyssey 2? Well, let's look at the possibilities. Possibility number 1. It is coming. Nintendo is working on it as we speak. We just gotta wait a little longer. Because of Majora's Mask and Galaxy 2, we assumed that any asset reusing sequel would come along pretty quickly, but Nintendo clearly likes to take their time. Tears of the Kingdom took a lot longer than we expected. Maybe Odyssey 2 is the same. I personally don't see that happening, but we'll talk about why in a bit. Possibility number 2. Bowser's Fury kind of was our second 3D Mario game on Switch. It was a small game, so it's hard to imagine that it would really count, but maybe enough of the core Mario team was occupied by it that it threw off this whole process of making a new Mario by a few years. It came out a few years after Odyssey, and it's been a few years since then. Did it kind of reset the 3D Mario counter? Did Bowser's Fury launch day become the new day 0, and now it's gonna be a few more years before the next really big Mario is done? That's also technically a possibility, though it really doesn't seem likely. It wasn't even a whole game, just an add-on to help sell a port of a previous game. Is that really worth tying up the core team and delaying the release of the next mainline title that's guaranteed to sell a lot more? Unfortunately, at this stage, we really can't know how Bowser's Fury fits into all this. Possibility number 3. Nintendo just don't wanna. They literally just don't feel like making Odyssey 2. We've seen time and time again that Nintendo does not always do what is logical. They don't always do what is right from a business perspective. Very often, their decisions are based on the desires of the individuals in charge of creative decisions. Sometimes this works out for them, and they produce weird left field blue ocean kind of lightning in a bottle. Other times, it doesn't work out so well. It's kind of a gamble. I mean, for just one example, you've probably heard by now the story of how the Zelda team wanted to make a sequel to Twilight Princess, but Shiggy made them do Link's crossbow training instead. That's a real thing. We would have had another Majora's Mask style sequel to Twilight Princess, which was the highest selling Zelda ever and would only be beaten over a decade later by Breath of the Wild. We could have had that game, and Nintendo could have had all the money that inevitably would have made. But Miyamoto wanted to do what was essentially a light gun minigame. So that's what they did. Granted, the game did sell surprisingly well, I'll give it that. But nowadays, I only ever hear people bring it up exclusively to make fun of it. My point is that if the powers that be just don't feel like making Odyssey 2, they've got other ideas they want to use for a brand new Mario game, that could be the end of it right there. They just feel like moving on to something else, you know? It would still be weird if that game that they're working on didn't come to Switch, but honestly, I wouldn't put it past them. I hate to say it, but this might just be the most plausible possibility so far. But golly, you know, I just can't seem to think of any other reasons why Super Mario Odyssey 2, or at least some new 3D Mario, wouldn't have hit the Switch by now. Wait a minute. I'm having a new thought. I'm remembering a video I did recently. What was the ultimate point of that video? Ah, yes. I believe that the reason we haven't seen so much as a pixel for Metroid Prime 4 yet is that Nintendo is saving it for their next system. And I also believe, for reasons that, again, I'll be explaining in another video very soon, Nintendo's next system is coming fairly soon. Next year is my guess. You don't think? You don't think that maybe, just maybe, Super Mario Odyssey 2 hasn't hit the Switch yet? Because Nintendo's saving it. Whenever Nintendo launches a new system, they, for obvious reasons, like to have a Mario game follow soon after. Right at launch is preferred if possible. Let's look at some Nintendo systems. N64, Super Mario 64 at launch. GameCube, Super Mario Sunshine within the first year. Wii, Super Mario Galaxy within the first year. Wii U, New Super Mario Bros. U at launch, and Super Mario 3D World within the first year. Switch, Super Mario Odyssey within the first year. Even if you don't believe that a new system is coming next year, we all know it's coming sometime in the next few years. The Switch is still selling, but it's going gray. It's old. It can't be their primary console forever. And if we get a new Mario on Switch, Will that leave them enough time to have one ready to launch within the first year of the next system's life? Maybe if Odyssey 2 dropped like this second, but if they wait any longer, that's gonna be a very tight window of time. It might even be impossible, especially if Odyssey 2 is their easier sequel, but what comes next is totally new for a new system. That kind of thing takes a lot of time. Now that it's taken them this long to give us a new Mario, it feels like the ship might have sailed for 3D Mario on Switch. But we know they're always working on Mario, and it's taken so long to get a new full title. But why? The only reason I could see it taking any longer is if they're holding off. As I believe is the case with Metroid Prime 4, we are so close to the end of the generation now that they might be strategically stalling some games so that they've got some stuff to give us when the next generation starts. And if there is going to be an Odyssey 2, I think that just might be where it is. That might be why we haven't seen it yet. It just makes sense to me. As always, I will state the obvious and remind you that I could be so wrong about any of this. There are so many little assumptions I'm making, little conclusions I'm drawing, and if even one variable doesn't line up with reality, the whole idea comes crashing down. But that is what I believe. That is what I believe is a very strong possibility. If anything, I want to believe that Super Mario Odyssey 2 is currently caught in some cross-gen limbo, because if it's not, then where the heck is Super Mario Odyssey 2? Where the heck is Super Mario Odyssey 2? Where is it? Please, I beg of you, head down to the comments, speculate, theorize, give us your ideas. And you know what? While you're at it, look around. You know, like just like check all your drawers. Look under rocks. Super Mario Odyssey 2 has got to be around here somewhere. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. And you know what? You know what? I'm gonna go check the crack between my bed and the wall. I swear, every time I can't find something, that's where it is.